Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer, and welcome to a Pro Cycling Manager special video. A couple weeks ago, I did a feature request video. What 10 things I would like to see come to the next edition or future editions of Pro Cycling Manager. Following the comments listed in that video, I have now put together the community list, your list of things you would like to see coming in future editions of Pro Cycling Manager. Now, the way that I have compiled this particular list is twofold. I've taken what I thought of it and helped rank that out, but in particular, I've gone with kind of the viewer setup, how frequently I saw similar type suggestions, and then also how much they were supported. But a lot of you suggested more than one thing within your comments, so making sense of that is what I have done here. Let's begin with number 10. Beginning also with equipment, as I did on my own list, their request is regarding info on the equipment in two manners. One, not just some sort of star rating that doesn't mean much of anything to an individual, but what is the actual impact? Is there a percentage boost, and to what? Is it boosting your climbing? Is it boosting your sprinting capability? How does it impact your riders? But twofold, when you go to sign a new equipment sponsorship deal, where's the info? How are we supposed to know the difference between Campagnola and Trek and Canyon, so on and so forth? There are so many deals out there. How are we supposed to know that we are getting a better deal or a worse deal? Coming in at number 9, level up email notifications. This one actually should be pretty straightforward. Every time a rider has that tick point, one of those 20 times that they level up over the course of their career, if that rider is on your team, you should have some sort of email notification from the team talking about their development. This is a highly common practice across sports management games, and yet we don't see it here. And you're left scratching your head of like, oh gosh, there's another writer that's picked up a half star. Which one is it? One of the only ways that I could ever figure it out is actually going back and watching old footage to figure that out. Coming in at number 8 is scouting. Not a revamp, adding in. Right now we have scouting at youth levels. And the moment they turn 18, we simply know everything about them. Where is the scouting system for the over 18 riders? That's what we'd like to see. While there's plenty of discussion throughout my series in the comments and within that video of AI, the one AI progression thing that I've included is a rivalry AI mechanic. Now, I'm not sure how this would necessarily be coded in. I'm sure there's a if this then that type scenario. However, we already know that to an extent there's some type of mechanic that this could be built on, and that is a lead team is generally tasked with chasing down a breakaway. But if they have a rider in the breakaway, they're not going to chase it down. So then who does it come down to? And sometimes it comes down to no one, and a breakaway ends up winning or getting a massive advantage until you pick up the mantle and pick up the chase. There's other teams with interest. There's other teams that'll end up picking up the chase. And that comes down to wanting to win a stage. It's a sprint stage. There's a breakaway. You don't have a rider in the breakaway, but you do have a sprinter in the field who has ambition to win the stage. Therefore, you place 3 riders at the front to chase down the breakaway and keep it in check and eventually catch up to it to set up your sprinter for a potential stage win. With a rivalry AI mechanic, what that would then do instead is every team would have a rival or 2 or maybe 3 max, but generally a rival. And there are times where in real life, a team will absolutely not do work, even though it would be advantageous to them, because it would potentially also be advantageous to their rival team. And so there are times where teams will hurt their own chances just to impact what's going on with their rival, not to help them out in particular. So what this would really come down to is, even though you are second overall and you've got a podium position and GC is worth your thing, if you have a rivalry with the top team, you're not going to work. You're going to force them to do the work, and maybe the third or fourth place team will step up and support, but you're not going to. It'd be interesting to see how that could be implemented. There's different ways. Working together in a breakaway, for instance, could also be impacted by this mechanic. Coming in at number 6 is something that I had on my list that was reiterated multiple times by many of you, really enthusiastic about this one. So I've thrown it in on this list as well, and that is to revamp the August signing period. Now, the proposal that I put forth that was well supported by the community was only a slight change to what we have right now. August 1st is the signing day, but instead of getting your 60 signing points on August 1st, you only get 10 points on August 1st. And then you collectively get 1 point per day for the next 50 days to then get to your 60 points in the end. What that does is it takes away that gamey feel of you do all of your transfer business on the 1st of August before any other team ever has a chance to get in there. This forces you to prioritize riders, prioritize your needs, and you run the risk of other teams coming in and signing them first. Now, there is a window, there is a time period based on the current mechanic of how the AI does it, and I don't think you need to change that mechanic. I think that mechanic's just fine. You're still going to get a head start, you're still going to have a slight advantage, but ultimately, you are running the risk of losing certain riders, re-signing a guy on your team or signing that last couple riders. Everybody else is going to get a shot at him first. And it makes the game a lot more realistic if you go that manner. At number 5 is something that I talk about regular within the series but did not bring up on my list, and that is a revamp of the time gaps. It was done 2 years ago. It was rolled back with the very first update. They weren't happy with the product that came out of their time gap revamp, and we went back exactly to the old system with zero change in that update. And it's now been the same ever since. So we are right back to the same issues that Cyanide clearly already recognized existed within the game regarding time gaps that they tried to address. Let's try again. We'd love to see a revamp, as would the community. At number 4 is a system used by different games that are out there, and that is the system for faces. When you have new characters coming in, new gen characters coming in, new riders, how the AI determines what their face looks like. There's only a few options right now in game, and we need a bit more diversity in our riders than what we have currently. And while for me personally, I don't find that to be a major deal, a lot of you in the community certainly found that to be an important issue. And coming in at number 3, this is a big one, and I think is something that could really work. And that is selecting regions for sponsorship. So every year when we sign those new sponsors at the end of July, you have 3 choices. One of them is your existing sponsor. So you have 2 choices. And they seemingly come in completely at random, other than fitting a financial window relative to your existing sponsor. But they could be from anywhere. Both narratively, but also just simple gameplay. If you have built a team around a requirement of having riders from this region, and possibly a third region, your team's built around that. You have a sponsor from halfway around the world, suddenly the team that you have does not fit the mold of the expectations of that new sponsor. So both narratively, for the sake of you trying to be a team based at location X, you care about location X, you're invested in location X, but also just physically the makeup of your team and meeting the needs of those sponsors. Now, transitioning and moving and changing, it happens. It does happen. It is a part of the sport and sports in general. There is movement. The request makes a lot of sense. being able to select regionally for your sponsorship would tie things in at least a bit closer to home, make it possible to keep things going narratively, but also keep things lined up with what you have with your team. But also, and I liked this portion of some of you who suggested this, there could be some sort of cost for doing that, meaning a penalty. You're getting less financial reward for sticking to your regional sponsor, meaning you're not going to get as big of a boost for staying at home. You've got a South Africa sponsor, you're going to get another South Africa sponsor, but they're not going to be able to offer quite what somebody in France would have been able to offer you. And therefore, you're taking a little bit of a financial hit. I'd like to see more options. I'd love to see 5 sponsors show up yearly, and a couple of them are regional. A couple of them are more international. The international ones might be worth a little bit more than what you're getting with the regional sponsors. And then it's up to you to decide. Do you care about the narrative? Do you care about keeping the flow that you have within your team, the writers that you have that fit that need, that are going to help get you a boost with that sponsor? Or do you care about the money? Do you care about the finances that somebody else is going to have to offer you? It could really add some realism, some importance to the game, something a little more dynamic than what we have right now when it comes to sponsorship. Speaking of dynamism, coming in at number 2, dynamic regions. Now, this comes down largely to what I've been doing for the last 2 years since they switched the scouting system, and then we saw that there's this dynamic system of nation popularity and nation training. Between those two numbers, they change. The system a year ago was very straightforward, and you knew what you needed to do, and you go out there and you could make progress. This year, it seems to play at odds. You can far exceed what is necessary and still not make gains. So it's a lot harder system this year. I do not know what's going on under the hood regarding that specifically on how it works, though the system is still there, very much there. It's just not as straightforward this year. But the request is for dynamic nations, meaning you should be able to build up a nation, but a nation should also be able to slip up and get worse. With retirements, we do see a change. The US is a great example of a nation that didn't exist in the world of cycling at all, came along, was incredibly powerful, had 2 or arguably 3 all-time greats come along, then go through a period of decline, and are slowly re-emerging now. So the world, in reality, is a bit of a roller coaster. Seeing the ability for a more dynamic shift upward and downward from nations would be fantastic. Before we get to number 1, a few quick honorable mentions. 1, a revamp to the morale system where more interaction could improve or hurt morale. Sponsor impact after August the 1st. So right now, by time you sign at the end of July your sponsor deal for the coming year, that's it. Doesn't matter one iota what you do until the turn of the year. Let's make it matter. Let it have some sort of impact on the coming season. Next up is the ability to promote from your development team, and in particular, not as an August 1st type thing, but as a mid-season thing. You had an injury, or you have a young developing rider that you're like, oh man, I need to get this guy into the squad. Being able to bring them up mid-season. Lastly, in the honorable mentions is more contract possibilities. So more options when you're negotiating regarding team leader, more options in terms of contract length or amount or maybe bonuses. But that brings us to number 1 on the list, and that is negotiable objectives. This is something that I brought up on my list and was the most popular recommended feature request for Pro Cycling Manager down the road, PCM 24 or otherwise, bringing back negotiable objectives. It's a system that used to be in the game. Absolutely loved it, greatly miss it. Within that, adding in other elements such as minor sponsors that have just specific requirements, and do you agree to or not? Or also more options in what those objectives are, such as like what we have in the pro cyclist mode where you're working as a teammate and they expect you to go in the breakaway. For some sponsors, that's all they're looking for. You can head to a Tour de France as a Continental Pro team, and you should not be winning the race. You're a Continental Pro team. There's no reason for them to expect you to finish on the podium at the Tour de France. But maybe they expect you to get your sponsor on TV, meaning they want you in the breakaway for X number of kilometers over the course of the race. Putting a rider in the breakaway regularly, that combativity award, which is a real thing, and why isn't the combativity award not more prevalent in the game? Should be. It's very prevalent in the Tour de France title. It's a little confusing why it's not in the PCM title. Wait, that's another honorable mention, I suppose, now. But that is going to do it for this list. Thank you for tuning in, and I really hope that the folks at Cyanide do get a look at this video. There were a few features from last year's series of videos between my personal one and the community one that did make it into the game. This has not been seen yet, but I'm going to see if I can get this out there and get this to them. And you can absolutely help me with that one by dropping below, clicking that like button, leaving some more comments here on what you thought of the community list. We could build on it even further, because if they are seeing the list, they just as easily can look down at the comments section. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. And bye for now.